Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and his name is Angelo Valenti, psychologist, consultant, coach, and author of the book "You're Making This Way Too Hard. Find Your Easy Way to Enjoy Life." So, how are you doing today, Mr. Valenti?
I'm terrific, Keegan. How are you?
That's good to hear. I'm doing fairly well myself. All things considered in the world today.
Well, it changes every day, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it does. Change is inevitable. It happens in quite literally everything. I think the only thing that is consistent in this world is that nothing is consistent.
Exactly.
So, but you've got a lot of titles behind you: psychologist, consultant, coach, and author. So you decided to take all of those titles and put them in a book for everyone to read, essentially, right?
Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to draw on my 40 years of plus almost 50 years of professional experience now.
Oh wow.
And the reason I wrote the book was because in my consulting and my coaching practices, I've seen so many people who are overcomplicating their life uh, that I wanted to give them a roadmap to make things a little simpler and realize that you can enjoy life and it doesn't have to be that hard.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't see to me though, life has always been difficult, right? But you're saying it doesn't have to be hard. How is that?
Well, I think a lot of people make things more difficult than they need to in a
Mm,
variety of settings, both in personal settings and professional settings. And really, I broke my book down into several sections. The first section being how the systems around us influence us or affect
mm,
us. And there are
yeah.
so many systems that do surround us that it's sometimes hard to realize how much they do impact it when you think about the communication systems, the education systems, work, governmental systems. And all
Mm,
those are broken down into several subsystems, and there's really no time
mm,
during our day when one or more of those systems isn't impacting us.
yeah.
So I really give people four choices.
Mm-hmm.
One is to fight the system.
Mm-hmm.
One is to uh, try to make the system better.
Mm, I like that.
One is to ignore the system. And the
Mm.
fourth is to figure out a way to make the system work for you.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. But I don't think that many people recognize that that's an option. If you
Mm.
can find, and what you have to do is find out what the intricacies of the system is. What is that system trying to accomplish?
Okay.
And
Huh.
it's often not what you think they're trying to accomplish. Uh, but if you can figure out a way, and I use an example
Mm-hmm.
in my book of when I was in graduate school. Um, when I got into graduate school, my goal was to get out of graduate school as quickly as possible with a PhD, and I set the goal for 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
which nobody in that department had ever done it in 4 years before. And the
Oh
first
wow.
thing I realized when I got to graduate school is I was the dumbest person in my class.
Oh
I
no.
wasn't dumb, but I got into graduate school after all. But I was
Mm-hmm.
not as brilliant as some of my fellow students.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few things I figured out very quickly about that particular system within that department of that graduate school at the University of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things I figured out was that professors do not like to be argued with. So, so
Yeah. Yeah.
and it only took one or two classes for me to figure that out. So, so I realized so I decided, well, I could either try to display my brilliance and argue with the professor,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed that some of my other fellow students did that, and it didn't end well for them. They ended
Mm-hmm.
up having a lot more work to do, and the
Yeah.
professors kind of looked at them more cynically or skeptically than me. I just kept my mouth shut and nodded nodded my head and took good notes and did well on the
Mhm.
tests. And I kind of breezed through my classes.
Mhm.
The second thing I realized is that all of the professors in the department had to publish
Hmm.
in order. It was a big university, University of
Uh-huh.
Georgia, so they had expectations to publish research papers.
Uh-huh.
So when it came time for me to do my master's thesis, back then we had to do a thesis and a dissertation, two research projects. I think you only have to do one now.
Mhm.
Uh, so I had a choice. I could either try to come up with something myself or ask one of the professors what he was interested in.
Hmm.
So one of the professors hadn't published anything in a while,
Mhm.
and I figured if he had something that might be interesting, I could do my research project on that, my thesis on that, and
Mhm.
he'd help me come up with some ideas. So we came up with a great idea. I did the research
Mhm.
using college sophomores who will do almost anything for extra credit, and,
Yeah.
and lo and behold, I got a good result from my thesis, and the thing got published.
Oh wow.
And yes, I wasn't even out of graduate school yet, and I had a paper published. And since it was my research, I was the lead author. Although, to be honest, the professor did a lot of the writing because I had no idea how to write a journal article. Uh,
Yeah.
right?
Those are difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd never done it before.
Mhm.
Um, so when it came time to do my dissertation,
Mhm.
I figured, heck, it worked once. Let's see if it'll work again. And I, I asked, I asked a different professor what he was working on, and I said, "Is there any aspect of your research?" Because he was prolific. He'd written
Mhm.
hundreds of journal articles, so I knew that
Oh wow.
the lure of a journal article wasn't going to work on him. So I had to try a
Uh-huh.
different approach. So, is there some aspect of your research that you haven't investigated yet? And he
Hmm.
said, "Yeah, well, I kind of been thinking about this." I said, "Well, do you think that'd be a good dissertation topic?"
Mhm.
And he said, "Yeah, I think it'd be terrific." So we designed an experiment. And again, I did all the background research and I ran the
Mhm.
study, again, using college sophomores. Um, and psychology is the systematic study of the college sophomore and the white rat.
That's a
So,
good one.
uh,
That's a good one.
yeah. Um, so I did the study, and son of a gun, it got published again.
Oh wow. That's
So
awesome.
I had two journal articles published, and when it came time for me to defend my dissertation, which is the last thing you have to do before your newly minted PhD,
Mhm.
who was on the committee but
Oh no.
the professor who I did
Oh
his
no.
research on his theory. So
Oh, that's
when a tough question came up from one of the other professors about my research,
mhm.
before I had a chance to answer, he jumped in and answered for me because he was going to defend his own theory because it was his theory.
Mhm.
And so I breezed through that and got out in 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
Um,
cool.
so then my next challenge was I got to find a job. This is
Mhm.
1975, and my
Mhm.
goal was to be a college professor.
Mm.
So I started applying for teaching jobs and found
Mhm.
one at Oklahoma City University.
Oh, okay.
So I moved from Georgia to Oklahoma City, which
Yeah.
is a northern suburb of Texas, where you're living,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
and, and started teaching psychology there,
Oh wow.
which I loved. I loved teaching.
Mhm.
Um, and after a year there, the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences asked me if I'd like to be the chairman of the Department of Psychology,
Wow.
which came out of left field because the guy that hired me
Mhm.
was the chairman of the Department of Psychology. And
Really?
I said, "We already have a chairman." And the dean said, "Yeah, but nobody really likes working with him, and we'd rather have you do it." So I
Oh
said,
boy.
"Okay, is there more pay involved in this?" And he said,
Mhm.
"No." I said, "What? So what is it?" "Well, it's more
Yeah.
responsibility. You have to be in all these committee meetings and things, but The benefit
Mm-hmm.
is you get to make out your own schedule and everybody else's teaching schedule.
Ooh, that is.
So that's that, and that's pretty big because you're
Mm-hmm.
only teaching 8 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
four
Wow.
cla-
Yeah.
four classes, 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
Mondays and Thursdays or Tuesdays and Fridays or whatever.
Yeah.
So I made out the premium schedule for myself. I was young and naive and selfish, I
Oh.
guess. But 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 what it allowed me to do when you're teaching, a lot of people don't know this. You have a lot of time on your hands, and this was a small school, so there wasn't that research requirement.
Ah.
So I had time to play a little golf, play a little tennis, and teach 8 hours a week. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd spend some time in the office working with students who had extra questions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And after 4 years, I had two children at the time, two young boys, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized that I wasn't going to be able to provide for them in the way I was provided for when I was growing up. I grew up in a upper middle class household, and uh, you know had pretty much whatever I wanted, the best of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do the same for my children,
Mm-hmm.
and so I
Naturally.
left academia and
Mm-hmm.
joined a consulting firm. It
Okay.
was a big international consulting firm. They were opening up an office in Memphis. So I moved from Oklahoma City to Memphis and
Okay.
started consulting. And it was a little bit of a shock because at the time, this is 1979, early 1980,
Mm-hmm.
and I had black hair at the time and, and a kind of an afro and a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing, the guy that hired me, the manager of the office, the first thing he said, "How attached are you to that beard?" And I said,
Mm.
"Well, is it going to affect my ability to work with business people?" And he said, "Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
probably is." So I said, "Okay, beard
Mm.
goes." Uh, had to buy suits. Didn't own a suit
Oh man.
because I was teaching in jeans and a t-shirt every day. It's one of
The
the
best way.
perks. One of the perks of being a professor.
Yeah.
Um, so I bought some suits, cut off my beard, and learned how to work with businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and fell in love with it. Uh, and I really love working with business people because they're forward thinking
Mm-hmm.
and they're willing to take risks.
Yeah. That's good.
And they don't know a lot about psychology, especially about people. They know their business up, down, and sideways, but they're not good at reading people or
Mm-hmm.
understanding what it takes to build a team.
Yeah.
And if the people that build successful teams almost do it by accident, unless they've got some help.
Mm-hmm.
So I really loved working with businesses. They taught me a lot. RHR International was the name of the firm. I'll give a shout out to them. Um, and in 1982, I had developed a client relationship with a gentleman in Nashville, and he had a big life insurance agency, part of Northwestern Mutual Life, one of the biggies.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
yeah, it was a top 10 agency. They had
Yeah.
offices in Nashville and Knoxville and Kingsport and Chattanooga and Huntsville, Alabama and Florence, Alabama. So I mean, it's a big operation.
Mm-hmm.
And he really liked what I was doing for him, and I liked working with him. We really hit it off, but he didn't like paying the big national consulting firm
Yeah.
rates.
Go
So he
figure.
asked me how would I be interested in moving to Nashville and setting up my own shop, and he said, I'll help you. I'll make it easy for you.
Oh
I'll give you
wow.
an office and you can run your phone, your health insurance, all that stuff through me. And I'll guarantee you what you made last year.
Oh wow. That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, I'm 33 years old. And I said, well, that's the typical Godfather made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Uh-huh.
So, so I took it. Moved to Nashville
Mm-hmm.
and started my consulting career, or my own consulting business, I should say, and
Uh-huh.
have been doing it ever since. Be 43 years come June 1st,
Wow.
um, and have loved
Yeah.
every minute of it. I've got great clients. I have clients that I've worked with for many years, and some new clients thrown in too, which is always fun. Learning about new industries and new businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, it really led me to the point where I've always been too, quote unquote, too busy to write a book. But
Uh,
I had some time, and this book has been bouncing around in my head for a few years, so I decided I was just going to go ahead and write it.
there you go.
So that's the quick and dirty of how I got to where I am today.
Oh boy, that is quite an adventure. And
Yes,
talk that, I mean, first of all, congratulations on completing your degree and everything within the first 4 years. It was correct.
correct.
Wow, that's impressive. And I've also got to say that kind of luck having the uh, professor up on the board while you're defending the dissertation, that kind of feels like that would have been my luck. Like, of course, he would be up there too. Like,
Right.
how did you feel in that moment? Because I don't know exactly what emotion it would have been. It would have been a couple of them. And how did you feel whenever he was defending for you? I guess is the better option.
Keeping in mind that
Mm-hmm.
my goal was to get the PhD,
Uh huh. You didn't
and
really.
I did I didn't do anything illegal, immoral, or unethical
Mm-hmm.
or fattening. So um, I was relieved because I'd never been through that before. I didn't know what it
Mm-hmm.
was. What does defending your dissertation mean? I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I was pretty well prepared. I could answer 90% of the questions, but every once
Mm-hmm.
in a while, when they'd throw me a curveball, I had somebody to help me out with it a little bit.
That's always nice to have support like that,
Oh, sure.
especially whenever you don't like expect it to be there, you know. And it sounds like you've had a lot of support through the years, and that's awesome. Um,
I have. I've been very fortunate. I've built really good, strong relationships,
mm-hmm.
um, and I obviously wouldn't be where I am without those relationships. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
I
you
don't
can
take.
acknowledge, and you
Oh,
can
I don't take.
acknowledge
I don't
that.
take them for granted. I don't take credit for doing this all on my own. What I do
Mm-hmm.
take credit for is recognizing an opportunity when I saw it and taking advantage of it.
There you go. I like that. And I really do appreciate the fact that you're giving credit where credit is due, because not a lot of people do that nowadays, you know? And you're still sitting here in your own power and acknowledging what you did. And that's still just great to me.
Well, well, thank you. Uh, whatever ego I had at one point in my life has experience has kind of beaten the ego out of out of me, and I'm just very grateful
Hmm.
for the life that I've had up to now, and looking forward to the next 20 years.
That's awesome. Um, but you did say a word in there that trips up a lot of people every now and again, and that's ego.
Right.
So, ego is one of those things that everyone has one, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Whether people like to say they killed it or not, everyone has one. But some people don't really understand what ego is because ego is self, right?
Right. Right.
But
Well,
what is
yeah,
self?
according to Freud, there's the id, the ego, and the superego. And the id is your
Hmm.
base instincts, and the superego is your conscience, and the ego is your mature self. And
Hmm.
it's taken on a different meaning where it's become more self-involved, self-aggrandizing, believing that
Hmm.
you're bigger and better than what you really are.
Hmm.
That's what ego has become.
Hmm.
Uh,
Kind of like
and
I'm the main character in the video game, right?
right, right, right.
Uh,
And if you can recognize your self-worth, I don't like to use the word self-esteem at all,
okay.
uh, because if you feel good about yourself without ever having done anything, what good is that? So self-worth is where you recognize your value and the contribution that you make to the people around you or to your work or to whatever it might be. So I don't use the word self-esteem at all. Uh, but if you can recognize your worth without it going to your head and believing that you're bigger and better and more than what you really are, I
Mm-hmm.
think you have a chance to be a real centered, happy, and successful individual,
Mm-hmm.
successful in the game of life.
In the game of life. And how does someone get to that point though? Because isn't the point of living, or at least in today's society, to be better than everyone else, right?
I don't know if that's the point or not. I hope it's not the point.
I really I hope it's not either, because if it is, I missed a memo.
Well, I think the point of life is to be the best version of yourself that you can be
Mm, I like
and
that.
enjoy the journey along the way
Mm-hmm.
because it's very unlikely that you're going to be the best in the world at
Mm,
anything, right?
yeah.
I mean there was an old saying on the Wild West that there's always a faster gun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you can just work on being a little bit better than you were yesterday,
Mm.
a little bit happier than you were yesterday, a little healthier than you were yesterday, a little smarter than you were yesterday, I think that's a recipe for enjoying your life.
Yeah. It sure sounds like it. And it sounds like ego can be the cause of what makes us get everything so overcomplicated. Do you
Oh,
think so?
absolutely. Right. Well, one of the I think one of the things that drives people's egos these days is social media.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
they
yeah.
they judge their whole life by how many likes did I get? How many new
Mm-hmm.
followers do I have?
Mm-hmm.
How many videos can I make? And other people start comparing themselves to what they see on social media
Mm-hmm.
without realizing that what you see on social media is exactly what the other person wants you to see on social media. You don't know how many takes it took. You don't know how many filters were applied to that video or picture or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing the highlight reel of somebody else while
Mm-hmm.
you've got the blooper reel of your own life spinning around in your brain. So you can't compare that. So
Yeah.
that ends up making people feel miserable
Mm-hmm.
because they don't measure up to some artificial, scripted, edited, fake presentation on social media.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think social media was great in its inception,
Right.
especially,
Yeah.
uh, and it had its moments, and it still has moments where it shines, but it's largely outshone by doomsday scrolling and
Right.
everything.
Yes.
But I do think it's good that people can express themselves on social media. But like you said, it's whenever I start to sit there and compare my blooper reel to everyone's highlight reels that
Right.
I'm like, ah, man. And I know whenever I first started making like this podcast, for example, if I was doing a 10-minute episode for whatever reason and I would mess up early on, I would sit there and I would retake it, retake,
Right.
and it would just end up making it complicated, and I would get frustrated. I would end up losing my original thought because it was just I have to get it perfect because all these other podcasters can do it so good. And then I realized, oh wait, there's editing. I can always
Right.
edit.
Right. And I've been on enough podcasts now. I'm probably 30 or 40 of them by now that
Oh
I,
wow.
the the best podcasters are the most authentic.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who are
And
just
that's good.
they're just being themselves.
Yeah.
And and the artificiality comes through.
Mm.
At least it does to me.
Oh yeah, because you're a psychologist. You can tell whenever people are sitting there and they're more robotic. They're, um, waiting for a cue of
Right,
some
right.
sort, I guess. How do you tell if someone is artificial, quote unquote, or trying to make something scripted?
Well, their questions sound canned.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Uh, and the follow-up question, they don't ask good follow-up questions
Mm.
because the follow-up question might be taking them in a direction that they weren't planning on going. So they have
Uh,
to think of the question off the top of their head, and it's not as good a question because they didn't have time to think about it.
I can admit I've been there,
Oh, sure,
but
everybody gets there every once
yeah,
in a while, sure.
but I do love chasing rabbits because we don't know where they'll necessarily end up. Um, and I think that that's part of life too, and it's also part of trying to find the easier route, right? Because the easy route isn't always the one right in front of us, is it?
Oh, no, no, it's not. Eh, but what people somebody told me one time that so many people, when their ship comes in, they're waiting at the airport.
Hmm. Ah.
So they, right? So what I mentioned earlier was one of the things that I'll give myself credit for is recognizing when an opportunity had presented itself
Mm-hmm.
and taking the risk
Mm-hmm.
to pursue that opportunity. I mean, I started my consulting practice in 1982 in
Mm-hmm.
the middle of a recession in a
Yeah.
new city where I knew one person.
Oh boy.
And
That's crazy.
I had a lot more people telling me I was stupid than there were people telling me go for it.
Mm. Yeah.
But there's always going to be people to tell
Mm-hmm.
you don't do it. It's stupid. It's not going to work. Why are you doing that? I'm sure when you started your podcast, there were people going, "What do you want to
Mm-hmm.
do a podcast for?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There, sure.
Uh,
But
I
you were passionate about it and you were determined to do it, and by God, you did it.
yeah.
And
And
you're
here I
having
am.
fun. And you're having fun doing it.
Oh yeah, I love this.
Sure.
Uh,
And do all those people who told you don't start a podcast, do they have a podcast?
no,
Did they write a book?
no, I
Did they
don't think
start?
so.
Did they start their own business? Maybe one
I
or two of them.
yeah, maybe
Maybe.
one or two.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, but it's okay for them to take chances in their life or live their experience,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but they don't
Because
want you to do it too.
yeah, because it's that I got to be the main character in my story,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so whenever it comes to people telling you you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, I assume you would first look at your self worth, right? Because that's kind of where a root would be, a rock of sorts.
Absolutely. If you know what you're capable of,
Mm-hmm.
and the only way you're going to know what you're capable of is to move outside of your comfort zone every once in a while.
Mm. But
Because
it,
the
oh,
comfort the comfort zone, the problem with the comfort zone is it's comfortable,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but you're never going to achieve all that you're capable of if you settle for what feels good right now, what feels comfortable.
Mm. It's all like exercise, right?
Yes. Yeah, if say all right, I'm going to build up my body, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do 5 curls with each arm with 5 pounds on each arm. I mean, it's not going to work. It's easy,
Yeah.
but you're not going to get the results you want.
No.
You're going
Uh-uh.
to get the results you want by pushing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, how do we know when we push ourselves too far whenever it comes to being uncomfortable, though?
Well, that varies from person to person. Some people
Mm-hmm.
are real comfortable being uncomfortable. So they just keep pushing themselves until, well, you get to a point where you recognize you just can't go any further.
Mm.
You've pushed your body or your mind or whatever to the limit, or you've
Mm-hmm.
taken a risk that's gotten to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll see a lot of addictive behavior where people start
Mm-hmm.
out. We'll use gambling as an example.
Okay.
Okay, you can start out just casually betting $10 on a football game,
Mm-hmm.
and that can escalate for some people to the
Mm-hmm.
point where they lose everything. They lose their business, they lose their family, they lose their house, they lose everything. Um, but those people don't know when they've reached their limit,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
that's basically what an addiction is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and what I caution people is remember that every person who is currently an alcoholic
Mm-hmm.
made a decision at one point in their life to take that first drink,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, that's entirely 100% true.
Or place that first bet or
Mm-hmm.
whatever else they're addicted to.
Yep.
So there was a choice made there
Mm-hmm.
that led them down a path.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the great things that people can do is begin to take responsibility for the
Mm.
choices that they've made and recognize that they made those choices.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's painful, but sometimes it's empowering too. Because if you made the choices that can get you into that situation, that got you into that situation, that means that you can make the choices to get yourself out of that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's entirely true. I actually refer to addiction as a disease of choice.
It is.
Um, yeah, because like you said, it starts with an addiction. It doesn't start with an addiction; it becomes an addiction. It starts with a choice. I started with the choice of if I wanted to drink on the weekends, once a month, and then it slowly evolved into every weekend, and then every day after work, and then every moment I wake up.
Right.
And but the thing was is that to get out of it, I had to make that choice that I wanted out of it.
Right.
And so it's also a paradox of a sorts because addiction takes away your choice, but the only way out of it is to say, no, that's mine, give it back.
Right. Well, yeah, and it takes a certain amount of inner power and will
Hmm.
and determination, and it's not
Yep,
easy. It's
it
much
is not. Mm-hmm.
easier to get into an addictive situation than it is to get out of an addictive situation
It's
because
so easy.
the addiction takes control over you.
Hmm.
And you mentioned drinking as being your addiction at one point,
Hmm.
and I can tell when I'm talking to people, that I kind of know casually, if they schedule their day around
No.
when they're going to have a drink, they're a drunk. That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
I mean, I'm a self-confessed golf addict,
Hmm.
all
Yep.
right?
At
Uh,
least you can admit it.
yeah, but there's no 12-step program for golf addicts. We just continue to beat the little ball around all the time. But I schedule my week around when I know I'm going to play golf.
Hmm.
Played this
Yeah.
morning, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
Yeah. Um, so that's when you know somebody's addicted.
Hmm.
Whatever it is they're addicted to is when they're scheduling their day around when they can pursue that addiction.
And see, that's a really good indicator that I could ask people, like, hey, do you think you have a problem? Because you're kind of planning everything around this.
Yes.
And I never really thought about it that way before, but in a room not too long ago, I heard someone mention planning their day around drinking, and I was like, I do remember that.
Yep.
And at the same time, I also remember I didn't really care about planning because I was just going to have it with me no matter what. Because it got to that point, like
Wow.
it was bad.
Yeah.
But the thing was is that it really did take that choice to start, but it took a choice to get out. And that choice to start was a slippery slope. And like you said earlier, it's easier to get in it than it is out.
Right.
But why do you think some people choose to stay in it whenever they realize, oh well, wait, no, it goes back to the comfort zone. It's because people are comfortable. They're comfortable in their addiction a
Well,
lot of the time.
not only are they comfortable in it, they've built their whole life around it.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you decide to break from an addiction such
Mm-hmm.
as alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably going to have to get new friends
Yeah.
because all your friends drink a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you may have to change some of your social activities.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to change a lot about the way you live your life
Mm-hmm.
because you've structured so much of your life around that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hard part because you're venturing into the unknown. You don't know what the new life is going to be like.
But what if it's better?
Yeah, exactly. Eh, exactly. Yeah.
I know that that question got me a couple of times whenever I was in my active addiction. They said, well, what if it was better if you quit? And I kind of sat there and said, well, I don't know,
Right.
because I literally didn't know. I couldn't see anything besides where I was at. Um, and do you think that people that don't ever admit having an addiction to something have an addiction to something?
Look at their behavior. Uh,
Ooh,
that's all I can tell you. Look at their
okay.
behavior.
Then, I mean, I don't know. I mean, hang on just a second.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Phones are the biggest addiction I think nowadays.
Well,
Um,
it's you get a dopamine hit, you get immediate gratification,
mhm,
you get a chance to not deal with the rest of the world for a little while.
mhm.
All the things that might be bothering you, you can lose yourself in your phone.
Yeah.
And I
It
think when you see people in the same room texting one another,
oh, that's bad.
you've got a serious communication issue going on,
Mhm.
right?
Oh yeah.
So I think uh, we're more connected and more isolated at the same time than we've ever been.
How do you think we would fix that though? Because doesn't that it would require some form of connection beyond the phone, wouldn't it? Or do you think that there's something that can be utilized through the phone and social media to foster better connections?
Well, I think if you use social media, for example, if you use it, I don't want to say appropriately, effectively, let's say.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
like
here
that.
I am bashing social media. I'm on TikTok, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, so
Mm-hmm. It's there.
it's a way to get me out there a little bit, which
Mm-hmm.
is was painful for me at first, but I hired a social media manager to help me with it because I'm not good at it.
I need to get
Um,
one of those.
but, uh, but I don't use it to decide what I want to buy. I don't use it to decide what I want to wear. I don't use it to decide, who my friends are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I use it more for entertainment.
Mm.
Uh, I love some of the memes that people put out, even though they really have way too much time on their hands if they're doing this stuff. But I can laugh at it. I can think it's
Yeah.
terrific. Um,
Uh-huh.
but so I'm using it as a tool
Mm-hmm.
instead of as a companion. And
Ooh. That hurt. That hurt everyone that just heard that.
yeah,
Uh,
well, truth hurts sometimes, right?
yeah. A companion. Ooh, I never thought of someone referring to social media as a companion.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
They think they think all the people that follow them on social media are their friends, but they're not their friends.
Ooh.
And
Oh man. You're just hitting people left and right. I love
well,
it.
you know, If you want to
Well,
go to my Instagram or Facebook or any of those, if you want to rip me, go ahead because I don't pay any attention to it anyway.
see, that's what's great. You're using it the way it's intended to be used. You're just using it.
Well, maybe it's just because I'm old and I don't get it, but I don't care. I'm happy with it the way
There you
the
go.
way I use it.
But that's the thing too, is that you're happy with it the way that you're using it.
Yes.
And you're not trying to overcomplicate it. You're sitting there, you're saying, this is a tool to communicate with the world. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, whenever it comes to undercomplicating things, what's one of the best ways to kind of go about it? Um,
You mean uncomplicating things or
no, yeah,
undercomplicating?
yeah. Let's undercomplicate something.
Well, I don't know how you undercomplicate something
I'm not
unless you want to
sure
be in a
either.
coma, um, because just the fact that you're awake and
Hmm.
interacting with the world leads to some complications.
This is true.
It leads to some, things happen that you can't anticipate, and you've got to deal with those.
Yeah, yeah. This is true.
If you've ever had a water heater break in your house and there's
Ooh.
water all over everywhere, that's something you weren't planning on when you woke up that morning, but
Yeah,
you got
no.
but you got to deal with that. So
True, true, true.
I think the key is to control what you can control.
Control what you can control.
And in my book, I have a section about control. I have a chapter about control. And what I mentioned is that people either have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control.
Okay.
If they have an internal locus of control, they believe that they control the events in their life. They make the
Mm.
decisions, they make the choices, they take the directions that get them where they want to go. If you have an
Mm-hmm.
external locus of control, you
Mm-hmm.
believe that luck, fate, other people, outside forces,
Ah.
karma control your life.
Okay.
And the line in my book is in life, you're either the puppet or the puppeteer.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe outside forces control your life, you're the puppet. If you believe you control your life, you're the puppeteer. Would you rather be the puppeteer or you rather be the puppet?
I'd rather be the puppeteer.
Sure,
Um,
everyone would. Yeah.
yeah, but now here's an interesting thought. Is it possible that the two could be the same?
Tell me how.
I don't know. It's just a question. Like, I'm trying to think. Because time travel doesn't exist that we know of.
Not that we
Uh,
know of. Right.
and so that rules out basically all of them, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
um, but no, being the puppeteer, to me, a lot of people I think shirk away from it because there's a level of responsibility and
There's
accountability.
accountability associated with it. You hit the
Hmm.
key word, accountability.
Hmm.
What's wrong with being accountable?
Well, if it breaks, it's my fault. So I don't. It's not my fault. I don't
Well,
want it to be my fault.
but too bad. It is your fault.
Ah, man.
But that means you can also be accountable for the good things that happened to you in your life. It
Hmm.
wasn't just
Yeah.
luck. It wasn't being in the right place at the right time. It was something that you did to make that happen.
But if I broke it, I can also fix it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what are
Or
some
throw it out
com?
and buy another one.
I mean, some people, I think, literally will take something out of a box, use it once, and then go buy something brand new again.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those people, thankfully, but at the same time, I don't know how people could afford that.
Well,
Um,
they can't. What
ooh,
they're doing is mortgaging their future for the instant gratification.
ooh.
And it's an easy thing to do because
Oh yeah,
our whole economy is based on people buying stuff,
yeah. This is
right?
true,
And
especially
in
buying stuff.
fact, social media now, the two
Hmm.
things that social media wants to do is get you to buy stuff and get you agitated about something.
Yeah, this is true.
That's pretty
The-
much it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if you want to fall into that trap,
Hmm.
I mean the easiest way to make your life simple is if you're in debt, get out of debt as fast as you can. And one of
Ooh.
the easiest ways to get out of debt is quit buying crap you don't need. Right? I mean,
Yeah, you know.
you do get that hit, that adrenaline rush, or the dopamine hit, or whatever it is,
Mhm.
from that shiny new thing, and then unfortunately, it goes away. The
Mm.
dopamine hit goes away, and you're stuck with the bill
The
for
buyer's
that shiny
remorse.
new thing.
Mhm.
And one of the questions I like to ask people is, I want you to think back 10 years to something that you really wanted to have that was expensive and you bought it for yourself. A lot of people can't even think of anything they bought for themselves that was expensive 10 years ago. And if they can think of it, they probably don't even have it anymore. But
Yeah.
I want you to think back 10 years to a trip you took with somebody who meant a lot to you, a vacation somewhere. Maybe you went to Italy. Maybe you went to Mexico. Maybe you went to Canada. Maybe you went to Vegas, wherever it might be. A
Mhm.
trip you took 10 years ago. You
Mhm.
still have memories from that trip
Uh-huh.
that are often vivid. You can remember. You
Oh
can
yeah,
remember where
yeah.
you ate. You can remember what you did.
Uh-huh.
And that trip was probably less expensive, but more meaningful than
Mhm.
that shiny object you bought 10 years ago.
Mm.
So I think if you want to spend your money, spend it on experiences. Don't spend it on stuff.
Mm. I like that. That's really powerful because I was really trying to think of something that was expensive that I bought 10 years ago and I was like, and then I was like, oh, I didn't buy it, but and then you said or and I was like, oh, well, he nailed it right on the head.
Yep,
And then whenever you were talking about the experience, instantly I got memories from
absolutely.
and it's crazy because I didn't even have to think hard on it.
No,
It
you
was just
didn't.
there. It was
Right,
just there.
right. Because that's embedded in you.
Mm.
I mean, when you have those experiences, all of your senses are
Mhm.
involved in that experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when you buy a shiny thing or whatever it is, it
No.
it comes and goes. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
uh,
But it's so strong, isn't it?
it's strong at the time,
Mhm. And that's what gets people hooked on it.
right?
The Amazon cart, the biggest. Well, it's not really a thief if it's just kind of sitting there waiting for you, is it?
Oh, it's not a thief; it's an enabler.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Ouch. Man, you've got a lot of those today. I love
I
it.
know. I'm full of it.
You're just telling it like it is, though.
Yeah.
Um, so would the shopper be the codependent?
Who'd the codependent be? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. um, but let's see. We've got about 15 minutes left or so, and this has been an amazing conversation. So before we get too much further, I just want to say, could I see about getting you on the show again at some point? Because I would love to just see what other rabbits we can chase because this has been just awesome.
Oh well, thank you.
Of
Yeah,
course.
I'm happy to come on anytime.
Sweet.
Like I
uh,
said, I'm full of it.
now define it.
You define it.
Oh no, I'm not going there. I'm just joking. Um, but in writing a book, you had to really condense a lot of things, didn't you? Did you have to leave certain aspects out that you feel like may have put in more context that you wish you put in now?
No, because what I wanted it to do was be short,
Mm-hmm.
punchy,
Mm.
easily readable. It's a 2 hour read.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's 100 pages. It's a 2 hour
Oh yeah.
read.
That's easy.
And Uh,
That's a good
so I
read.
tried, if I had a point to make, I tried to make it quickly.
Oh, I love that.
And because so many, I mean, it's in the self help genre or
Mm-hmm.
personal development, if you will. And so many of those books are just 300 or 400 pages. They're padded full of fluff, in my opinion, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So I try to eliminate the fluff as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Although I told a lot of personal stories in the
Mm-hmm.
book because, when they're my stories, it's my book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think people can relate to them
Mm-hmm.
because they've all gone through similar experiences.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that's very powerful, I think, is creating that moment of being able to say, I can resonate with that story. I can resonate, or I remember a time that was similar to this, because that's whenever a lot of people start to go, oh, hey, that was me being the main character, you know?
Right.
Um, and man, personal stories are just one of those things that I love getting on the show too. So maybe if you got some personal stories, we could get some of those on there too. But I would really like to dig into some of the book. Man, I don't know. Like I said, we just got so many rabbits we can chase.
Oh,
I
sure.
love this.
Yeah, me too.
Um, but real quick, do you have any socials? Well, of course you got socials. We've been talking about socials all night, apparently.
Right.
What websites would you like people to go to visit you for your consultations and stuff like that?
Sure. First thing is my excuse me, my book's available on Amazon, Audible. I went in the studio, did an Audible version of it.
Nice.
Barnes and Noble, Draft to Digital. It's available on my website, which is angelovalenti.com.
Okay.
And if you buy it on my website, I have I charge more for an autographed copy, but if you listen to this podcast and want to buy my book off my website, I'll autograph it and I won't charge any extra for it. How's that?
Ooh.
It's angelovalenti.com. Uh, I'm on LinkedIn. Just search my name. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, X. Don't do much on X. TikTok. I make a lot of TikTok videos just where
Ooh.
I do short versions of the same kind of nonsense that I've been spewing here.
Ah, it's not
Uh,
nonsense. It's been
uh,
making sense.
uh, yeah, the people that like it a lot. Um, but it's just me telling stuff that I want to get out there. People want to listen to it, great. If not, scroll on past. Just swipe up.
I love it. Well, we'll keep all of this in mind for and everyone that listen to that. And once a reference, y'all can go to retrievingsanity.com and you'll be able to find his profile.
Can I
And
hold up my book at the end? They're
yes,
right
you
right
can.
there. It's a great cover. It's backwards,
Ooh,
but it's a great cover anyway.
it's not backwards for me. I can
Oh, good.
see you're
Perfect.
making this way too hard. Angelo Valenti, PhD,
Yep.
with the Enjoy Life and the signs all over the place.
Yeah.
So, um, and man, do you have any last words that you'd like to leave with some people? Because, I mean, it's not just all about taking the fluff out of things to make it easy and enjoyable, right? It's not just spending money on experiences. It's not simple making life simple, right?
Well, I guess if I had one thing to leave people with is you are the product of all of the decisions you've made up to now. So if you want your life to be better, make better decisions. And you're in control of those decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. And I think that that could be a good starting point for our next conversation
Sure.
because, you know, if if I'm doing so good where I'm at, but I want to do better, but I don't know what to do that is better, what do I do? Right?
That's yeah, That's a subject for a different day. That'll be our
Yeah.
next. That'll be our next podcast.
All right. That sounds like a good one to me. Um, but I'm trying to think. We got your socials. We got some great content out. We got the live stream going. Um, oh yeah. Uh, do you know a magical three-digit number that people can call whenever they are in a crisis? That's not 911.
No, I don't.
So, if someone is suffering suicidal ideations or in a crisis of that nature, they can dial 988. It is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline.
Boy, that's
Um,
great info. I'm glad you said that.
it
988. I'll
is.
never forget. I'll never forget it.
Yep. If we can teach our children how to dial 911, why don't we teach our friends and loved ones how to dial 988 just in case?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but again, this has just been a great episode. I loved it. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation whenever we kind of talk about if things are going good and I want it to be better, but I don't know where they're going to get better. What do I do? Somewhere along those
I
lines. I'll
got you.
refine it. I'll refine it.
We'll tweak it by the time by the time the episode's ready to air.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Um, and for everyone out there, I just want to say thank y'all very much for listening to Retrieving Sanity on Riverside, YouTube, wherever you watch it, or listening to WDJY 99.1 FM. And uh, Angelo, do you got any last words? Like
Yeah, go
sayonara?
out. Yeah, go out there and enjoy life. You only get one shot at it, man. Do it right.
I love it. Well, everyone, you heard the man. Go out there, do it right. So until we see you next time, y'all have a good one. Schlan. All right. And stop. Coolio.